Okay, so this is mantra 18 of Sri Isopanisad, the final mantra. And it's only a couple pages long. So we're also going to begin with the introduction and preface to Nectar of Instruction today, which is a beautiful, beautiful book. So Agne Naya Supatta Raye Yasman Vishwani Deva Vayunani Vidvan Yudhyasmaj Juhurana Ranam Eno Bhuyashtam Te Nama Uktim Vidhema. O my Lord, as powerful as fire, O omnipotent one, now I offer all obeisances falling on the ground at your feet. O my Lord, please lead me on the right path to reach you, and since you know all that I have done in the past, please free me from the reactions to my past sins, so that there can be no hindrances to my progress. Gaud Hare. So by surrendering to the Lord and praying for his causeless mercy, the devotee can progress on the path of complete self-realization. The Lord is addressed as fire because he can burn anything into ashes, including the sins of the surrendered soul. So he's addressed as Agni, right? As described in the previous mantras, the real or ultimate aspect of the Absolute is his feature as the personality of Godhead, and his impersonal Brahmajyoti feature is a dazzling cover of his face. So that was the previous verse we talked about yesterday. Fruitive activities, or the karma-kanda path of self-realization, is the lowest stage in this endeavor. As soon as such activities even slightly deviate from the regulative principles of the Vedas, they are transformed into vikarma, or acts against the interests of the actor. Such vikarma is enacted by the illusioned living entity simply for sense gratification, and thus such activities become hindrances on the path of self-realization. So karma-kanda is a razor's edge, right? Now karma-kanda generally means that you're performing material activities, according to the Vedas, especially sacrifices meant for sense gratification. But so if you're living this kind of life of sense gratification, it's very slippery. As soon as you make a mistake, you can become very heavily affected by sin, right? Now that's just in general, just living a life as a materialist, but especially Vedic sacrifices are very powerful, and the Vedic culture is very powerful. For example, you hear in the Krishna book, like, what was his name? King Nriga, who became cursed to be a lizard, right? He was a karmakandi, he was performing all these sacrifices, and he was interacting with these high-powered Brahmins, and so then he was giving charity, to all these Brahmins. And by accident, he gave, what wasn't even his fault, like some cows that he gave to one Brahmin. Some of those cows wandered into a herd of cows that he gave to another Brahmin. And the two Brahmins started fighting and stuff, and they ended up cursing him, right? So, and he became a lizard living in a well until Krishna saved him. So it's the nature of, these different materialistic rituals. Of course, giving charity is a little different, but performing karma-kanda sacrifices, if you make a mistake, then it's a very heavy reaction. It's very dangerous. Like, say you perform a yajna, and, in that yajna, it's like it requires the killing of a cow or the killing of a horse, like a ashvamedha yajna, and then you mess up and do it wrong, then there's a severe reaction. It's like you can basically go to hell, just from making a mistake performing a yajna. So self-realization is possible in the human form of life, but not in other forms. There are 8,400,000 species of forms of life, of which the human form qualified by Brahminical culture presents the only chance to obtain knowledge of transcendence. Brahminical culture includes truthfulness, sense control, forbearance, simplicity, full knowledge, and full faith in God. So these are the qualities of the Brahmins mentioned by Krishna in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And Brahminical culture basically means Vedic culture, right? What is Vedic culture? Well, you think of the agricultural society based on religion, temple worship, yajnas, and based upon the cow, right? All of these things are Brahminical culture, but basically it's the culture of the Brahmanas. Like the Brahmanas are the head of society, and they have a very, a complete religious system, and then the rest of the society is more or less following those same principles to varying degrees. So that's Brahminical culture. Now Prabhupada says here, human life qualified by Brahminical culture. It means that really only individuals following Varnashram under the traditional Vedic system can truly be considered human, right? Now, it doesn't necessarily, in one sense, Well, basically, like what it's saying is that really human society or human life truly begins or truly comes to its full position. You can truly be considered living a human life properly as soon as you begin taking up the Vedic culture. But if you're living sinfully, eating meat and animals and slaughterhouses and so many things, that's not really proper human life. You may have a human form, but you're considered a dvipada pashu, or a two-legged animal, right? Like you have a human body, but you're not really using it like a human being should, right? Like, for example, if you look at, all other animals, they basically follow their nature according to the laws of God without any choice. Like a dog is going to behave like a dog. If a dog, what do dogs do? What are some of the things dogs do?
Bark.
They bark. What else?
They're friendly.
Sometimes they're friendly, yeah. What do dogs do?
They want to yield time.
Okay, that's true. If you've ever had a dog, they don't stop, right? They always want to eat, no matter, they eat themselves to death practically, if you allow them. But they always protect, right? And they're loyal, all these qualities of dogs, but they don't really have a choice. They're just sort of bound by that body to follow that. Human beings, we also have a dharma. We have a nature of which, like, a human being naturally behaves. But human beings are different because our consciousness is at the forefront of our being. We have a choice. We can either follow human dharma or not. And so human dharma is Brahminical culture. That's actually the proper culture that humans are, by their nature, meant to follow. We don't follow it because we're choosing not to. Okay? And of course you have other religions and things like that, which also put down similar forms of dharma, which are meant for different people at different stages of consciousness. Okay, it is not that one simply becomes proud of his high parentage, just as being born the son of a big man affords one a chance to become a big man, so being born the son of a Brahmin gives one the chance to become a Brahmin. But such a birthright is not everything, for one still has to attain the Brahminical qualifications for himself. As soon as one becomes proud of his birth as the son of a Brahmin and neglects to acquire the qualifications of a real Brahmin, he at once becomes degraded and falls from the path of self-realization. Thus his life's mission as a human being is defeated. So just birth, in other words, what's happened in India, unfortunately, over thousands of years, is that the principle of Brahminical life, it became degraded to kind of like a form of racism. Right? You've heard of the caste system. So it just, rather than qualification, it just becomes based upon birth. So that's not really appropriate. It's actually considered demoniac. So therefore people, even though they may be Brahminically qualified, they're simply, you're born as a Shudra, you're a Shudra, you're untouchable, or whatever, right? But that's not really appropriate, although it is quite interesting that, generally those individuals born in a Brahmin family, they do have a leg up, like it is kind of easier in a sense in many ways, if it's truly a Brahmin family. Like if the family is truly following principles of Brahminical culture, then individuals born in that family, they can very easily take it up. It's not very hard for them. Like I've even seen, like with a lot of my godbrothers who, like, I know they come from India and they're born in Indian families. I didn't know they're Brahmanas, but a lot of them, and they're very humble. They'll never even say that they are, but like, just by inquiring and talking to them, like practically speaking, all of them are born in like high-class Brahmin families, but they're very, like, you never even know. They never say that or even think about it, really, but it's like they're super nice, like very pure and clean, and it's like they very easily take to Krishna consciousness. Like one devotee, I was just talking to him, I never thought he was born in a Brahmin family or anything, and then he's telling me, oh yes, my father was a priest at a Ganesh temple, and every day he would go and sit and do the puja, and he would sit there and, give out charnamrita and, all these things. And he was raised practically in this Ganesh temple, and he would do all as a little boy, he'd assist his father. I mean, that was like the family business, and he grew up in that environment. But, so when you grow up like that, it becomes very easy to become a pujari. Like it becomes very easy to become a devotee. And I could even see in his personality, he's like so pure. Like his consciousness is like super sweet and pure and kind. You know? So that's not because he's born in a Brahmin family, but he's born in that situation like his father's a Brahmin, like a true Brahmin. And his father raised him with all these nice qualities. And so he's also a Brahmin by nature, like truly a Brahmin. And therefore, when he wants to take to devotional service, it comes very, very easily. He understands everything. But, like maybe the philosophy he has to learn or something, but practically speaking, the culture and everything like that supports the philosophy, it's like very easy for him. Okay, any questions about that? So therefore, there's that element of training that's very important. So in Bhagavad Gita 6:41 through 42, we are assured by the Lord that the yoga bhrashtas, or souls fallen from the path of self-realization, are given a chance to rectify themselves by taking birth either in the family of good brahmanas or in a family of rich merchants. Such births afford higher chances for self-realization. So why would being born in a family of rich merchants, why would that give you ability for self-realization?
Because you don't have to work.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, you don't have to worry too much about money. Like when you're born in difficult material circumstances, you're just worried about surviving. But when you're born in kind of a wealthy family, it's not such a difficult thing. So if these chances are misused due to illusion, one loses the good opportunity of human life afforded by the Almighty Lord. The regulative principles are such that one who follows them is promoted from the platform of fruitive activities to the platform of transcendental knowledge. After many, many lifetimes of cultivating transcendental knowledge, one becomes perfect when he surrenders unto the Lord. This is the general procedure. But one who surrenders at the very beginning, as recommended in this mantra, at once surpasses all preliminary stages simply by adopting the devotional attitude. All right, so let's see here. Okay, so as the devotee here in this verse, he's saying, I offer you all my obeisances, right? He's basically, this verse, the devotee, he was praying before, remove your effulgence, let me see your face, right? And now he's kind of just throwing himself at Krishna's feet. And that's really the mood of this verse. Just full surrender, Atmanivedana. So if you do that, you surpass all the other systems of yoga. Right? Krishna mentions that in Bhagavad Gita. Sarva dharmam parityajam mekam sharanam vraja manmana bhavamad bhakto, right? So it's that process of throwing yourself at Krishna's feet that's actually like the pinnacle of yoga. And you may not be like, super advanced as a yogi. You don't have a lot of knowledge and renunciation, but you're already sort of stepping onto the highest platform. It's just a matter of time until your consciousness catches up. You know what I mean? It's like your body's already there. It's just a matter of time until you become purified by that process, and then you come to the highest level as well. Does that make sense? Like the activities we do at the temple here, like worshiping the deities, this is actually like the topmost platform of meditation. It's like the highest form of engagement. We may not be conscious of it, We may be thinking of, Star Wars or something like that, right? or Tekken 2. So we're thinking of different, kind of like mundane stuff, right? But it's a matter of time until your mind catches up to the activities that you're doing. Does that make sense? So it's like you've already stepped under the highest level of yoga practice. It just takes time to realize it. All right. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 1866, the Lord at once takes charge of such a surrendered soul and frees him from all reactions to his sinful acts. There are many sinful actions involved in karmakanda activities, whereas in jnanakanda, the path of philosophical speculation, the number of such sinful activities is smaller, but in devotional service to the Lord, the path of bhakti, there's practically no chance of incurring sinful reactions, because a devotee of the Lord attains all the good qualifications of the Lord himself, what to speak of those of a brahmana. All right, so as you go down kind of on the yoga ladder, and it becomes mixed more and more with material activities, then it gets more and more dangerous. Okay? So like if you're engaged in devotional life 100%, then there's very little chance for you to mess up and commit sin. You're very safe. If you're engaged in jnana yoga, like you're basically just a sannyasi living in an ashram, meditating and studying the shastra and stuff like that, then also, the sin is quite little, right? There's still sin, because anytime you act in the world for your own gratification, you get karma. And say the sannyasi, he goes out and buys a candy bar or something like that. He's doing something for his own gratification. And then on the way, he steps on a bug or something, right? So that's sinful. There's going to be reaction. Now, if you're engaged in karma kanda, or even if you're just a gross materialist, then everything you do practically is incurring sinful reactions. And therefore, like I was listening to a lecture today where Prabhupada is saying that, therefore, the sahad yajya praja srishtva, part of human life is the performance of sacrifice. Right? Like for the human being, along with this human body, it's almost like you should be born with a handbook. Like you get a car and it's got a glove compartment. So maybe like, when the baby's born, you open the mouth, and there's a little handbook, pull it out, has the day of the birth and everything. So that handbook is the Vedas, right? And in that Vedas, Saha Yajna Praja Srishtva, at the time of creation of human beings, there's also the principle of Yajna was created. It's like it's part of our life. It's our tool. Just as the cow is like part of human society in a sense. It's like very important to us. So similarly, yajna is very important too. Because the human life is meant for self-realization. And yajna is going to keep you pure. It's like consciousness in this particular body. It comes to the forefront of being. Like consciousness is really the center of human life. In other forms, it's basically sense gratification. But as soon as you get a human form, it's like the gift is that your consciousness is right at the surface. And it's not covered by lust, anger, and greed. Yeah, I mean it is, but it's not as much. It told Bain Avrato Garbas Tatatinedam, what is it, Avratam? So it's like, like the child covered by the womb, the smoke covered by fire, and then you have, the human being is like the smoke covered by fire. So, you can, just as the smoke is covered by fire, if you cultivate the fire very carefully, you can get like a beautiful fire without any smoke, And then that's what you want to do with the human form of life. You want to minimize all the smoke of lust, and you want to bring out the pure consciousness of the soul. And so, therefore, you have to perform sacrifice because it keeps you free of sin. If you're a materialist, then you have to perform the Pancha Mahayagya, the Shuna Yagya, to keep yourself pure. Does that make sense? It's like you bathe. Every day you get up and bathe. So similarly, human beings are supposed to bathe every day by performing yajnas. And then that will keep your consciousness from getting dragged down by sin. That's why, why is Arjuna so scared of sin? Yeah, he's like terrified of it. In the beginning, he's like, this is very dangerous stuff. I'm going to be killing family here. Obviously anybody would be thinking twice, right? But he's like really, shaking and stuff because he understands the nature of sin. It's so destructive, right? It's like we're afraid of Vaishnava aparad, I don't want to offend any devotees. Well, you should be afraid, Some of us may not be, but you should be afraid of Vaishnava aparad because you know that it's going to cover your consciousness. So similarly, sin does the same thing. Like in Western religion, people are afraid of sin because they feel like they're separated from the association of God, or God's going to punish them. Is usually what it is. I don't want to sin because I'll go to hell. So in the Vedic culture, it's not so much that you're just terrified of going to hell, although that is there, right? Narakashyedam, you're scared of eventually. That was Arjuna's fear, is that if he destroys society and destroys the women and the pinda and all these things, then such individuals dwell always in hell. So there is fear of that, but mostly it's like you're afraid of nehabhikramanashasti pratavayana vidyate. You're afraid of being dragged down from the human form of life into a lower form of life, right? Which is the effect if you allow yourself as a human being to become contaminated with sin. So therefore there's this cleansing process of always performing sacrifice, okay? So, and in that the requirement of that sacrifice becomes less the more that you are engaged in yoga processes. So if you're engaged in jnana yoga, then you're not really that much in danger of sin. If you're engaged in bhakti yoga, then there's really practically no sin. What can you do at the temple, say, if you live at a temple and you're performing service, what can you really do that will cover you in sin? Everything is there is yajna. The whole thing is yajna, right? Everything you're doing all day, huh?
Killing roaches?
Killing your children? Is that what you said? She's like, what about your child is screaming and hypothetically
No.
killing roaches? Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. Yeah, there's certain things that we do here which are sinful. For example, killing roaches, right? That's the only thing really I think that we kill. I mean, I kill roaches all the time because you have, like in the deity kitchen, you have to, because if you don't, they'll just infest by the thousands and they're filthy. And even rats we don't really kill, or mice. They come in the kitchen all the time. They're all over the place here, and they chew right through the walls and everything. They're like infesting the whole city. And but we don't really kill them. We just catch them and then release them, somewhere else. But roaches, yeah, there's certain things that we have to do. But we have to do that in the consciousness that you're doing it for Krishna, right? Like the reason we have to kill roaches is because it's for Krishna. Because otherwise they'll contaminate everything and it'll become filthy. In Los Angeles, I've never actually seen a cockroach. Actually, I'd seen a cockroach once in my life before I moved to Los Angeles. Can you imagine that? Like even if you just go to Northern California, at least where I live, I never even seen a cockroach my entire life. Here, they're like just everywhere, all over the place. And it's not even like just the ghetto neighborhoods like this one. It's the even if you go in Beverly Hills and stuff, like if you're walking at nighttime on the sidewalk, big giant roaches running across and stuff. It's just one of those types of cities, the climate and everything. So anyway, yeah, there are some things that we have to do, but that's very minimal, right? Like it's practically not even there. Okay, so let's see here. I think we're on this next paragraph here. A devotee automatically attains the qualification of an expert Brahmana authorized to perform sacrifices, even though the devotee may not have taken his birth in a Brahmin family. Such is the omnipotence of the Lord. He can take a man born in a Brahmin family as degraded as a low-born dog-eater, and he can also make a low-born dog-eater superior to a qualified Brahmin simply by the strength of devotional service. Okay, this is the point made by Queen Kunti. So when people discriminate against Vaishnavas that they shouldn't perform these sacrifices, they're not qualified because of their birth, it means that they don't understand the purifying power of devotional service, or they don't accept it. They don't have faith in the power that devotional service can purify you. Okay? Since the omnipotent Lord is situated within the heart of everyone, he can give directions to his sincere devotees by which they can attain the right path. So notice sincere. It means like you're constantly engaged in service. Such directions are especially offered to the devotee even if he desires something else. Dun dun dun. So if you're a sincere devotee and you're constantly serving Krishna, you may want to do some other thing. You may want to perform a sinful activity, and it's kind of hard because Krishna is there in your heart saying, don't do it, turn around, stop, make a U-turn, You know what I mean? So, and this is like what devotees say when they fall down. They practically have to pray to Krishna to go away. Like there's some devotees trying to visit a prostitute or something, or do drugs, the devotee's like, Krishna, please leave me alone. Let me just do this. You know what I mean? Because Krishna's sounding all the alarms, right? He's like, your full power of your consciousness is raging forth and saying, stop, don't do this. Right? So as far as others are concerned, God gives sanction to the doer only at the risk of the doer. So if you're not trying to surrender, then Krishna doesn't really get involved with your karma. But in the case of a devotee, the Lord directs him in such a way that he never acts wrongly. Of course, you have to accept the direction, right? So Srimad Bhagavatam 11.542 says, Swapada moolam bhatita priyasya tvaktanya bhavasya hadi padesha vikarma yachtot patinam katanchit dhunoti sarvam mridisandavishta. The Lord is so kind to the devotee who is fully surrendered to his lotus feet that even though the devotee sometimes falls into the entanglement of vikarma, which means sin, acts against the Vedic directions, the Lord at once rectifies such mistakes from within his heart. This is because the devotees are very dear to the Lord. All right? So the devotee doesn't have to perform prayashchitta. Prabhupada will make this point in Nectar of Instruction, that the devotee is beyond prayashchitta. He just has to basically reinstate himself in devotional service, Like say that we're mentioning a devotee visits a prostitute or something. So some horrible sin happens, and then really all the devotee has to do is just sincerely pray to Krishna and regret what he's done, and again take up devotional service, and then is purified. Doesn't have to perform some ritual or anything like that. Okay? That's just the power of devotional service. Of course, that can't be abused, right? So in this mantra of Isopanisad, the devotee prays to the Lord to rectify him from within his heart. To err is human. A conditioned soul is very often apt to commit mistakes, and the only remedial measure to take against such unintentional sins is to give oneself up to the lotus feet of the Lord so that he may guide one to avoid such pitfalls. The Lord takes charge of the fully surrendered souls, thus all problems are solved simply by surrendering oneself unto the Lord and acting in terms of his directions. Such directions are given to the sincere devotee in two ways. One is by way of the saints, scriptures, and spiritual master, and the other is by way of the Lord himself, who resides within the heart of everyone. Thus the devotee fully enlightened with Vedic knowledge is protected in all respects. So when devotees asked Prabhupada, can you fall down? He said, no. Right? Nope, can't. And then everyone's going, wow, how come? And Prabhupada said, because I'm always praying to Krishna, So if you're constantly absorbed in Krishna and praying to him for his protection, then you can't fall down. But that's the only way. As soon as you don't do that, then, good luck, right? So that's the idea here, is that if you fully surrender to Krishna, then he'll protect you from sin, And the way he protects you is by advising you. He'll advise you from within. And there's so many different ways Krishna will advise you. I mean, he can advise you, as it says here, through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Sometimes you'll see sadhus, right, will advise you. Oftentimes, it could be like you call a senior devotee or godbrother or whatever, and you ask them their opinion. That's there, like a mature devotee. Sometimes, have you ever noticed, like, you'll sit in a class, like a Bhagavatam class, and the particular thing you're struggling with, or the issue you're dealing with, the question you have, it's answered, Like the devotee's like looking right at you and saying, yes, and then there's this problem and that one and this one, right? So Krishna will do that. He's using the devotee, he's using the sadhus to speak to you, because he's the super soul, right? And so there's all sorts of ways in the Shastra too, not that devotees should just, I've got a question. Let me go ahead and let's see here. Oh, yeah, that's the answer. That's not necessarily like that, although that does work sometimes. But really, like, you can be studying the Shastra and the answer to your question is there, Or even like in the Bhakti Shastri class. Like I noticed with myself, like maybe I'm kind of thinking about something and I want like an answer to something. And then as I'm reading the class, like the answer comes right out of my own mouth. Like as I'm reading and talking, it's like, wait a minute, I'm blah, 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 and I'm speaking and everything, but it's like, wait a minute, I need to hear this, This is exactly what I need to hear. Oh my gosh, and Krishna, I don't want to hear it. This is what I didn't want to hear, and you're making me the one who has to speak it, right? So in this way, Krishna will speak through the Shastra as well. So in this way, the Super Soul is constantly speaking to us, and then of course he speaks to us within our own heart too. Of course, you do have to be somewhat advanced to hear it. It's not like Krishna. If Krishna in your heart tells you to murder somebody, better ask Savas Prabhu or something for permission, right? better ask a few devotees first, right? So you don't want to speculate that you're somehow being enlightened by Krishna. We don't do that. But at a very advanced stage, then you can be guided by Krishna. Okay. Now, also notice Prabhupada says here, unintentional sins. What does that mean? How is a sin unintentional? Just walking along and you slip on a banana peel or something. Yeah?
I was, what the Veda did is, the Chanamrita water. I was long time ago, I put it on the plants. Like
You used to pour Charnamrita on the plants?
Yeah, I did the water with the haperos and oils. So I can't drink it because it's very strong, because I also put it in the plants. And I asked Rabindranath Prabhu one time, he's saying, no, you can go to hell if you do that again, to put it on the ground every day.
Well, yeah, I mean, put it on the ground, like if you're throwing it on the ground or something, but not necessarily the plants. If you water the plants, it's fine, right? They're a jiva. They can also take it, right? Of course, maybe not the yogurt, you don't want to pour the yogurt on there, but, if you give Krishna's water to plants, it's perfectly fine. If you're just pouring it on the ground, like throwing it, like out of disdain, or like you're not respectful, like you're deliberately disrespecting Charnamrita. But if you're trying to give it to a living entity, that's fine.
That's the way he said, well, you don't make a mistake. You was doing something with no intention. That's what he told me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, I mean, he's making one point. I don't mean to contradict him or something, but that could be discussed in more detail, because it's not like you're just throwing it on the ground. But anyway, but really unintentional means that like you're not really planning it out. You're just overwhelmed by the forces of nature. Like it wasn't something that it's not like you've accepted that as the proper standard of life. You don't care what the Shastra says, right? It's just that something, all of a sudden you're just overwhelmed by lust, or you're overwhelmed by whatever it may be, greed or whatever it is, and you become totally deluded, and the force is so strong on you that you're just kind of swept away by it. Bala iva hiyasya buddhi. No, I'm sorry, that's different. That's committing sins on the strength of chanting. What does Arjuna say? Indriyani pramatini, balavad something. But I know all these slokas. I keep forgetting. My brain is deteriorating. But Arjuna says there in the Bhagavad Gita, I think it's in the 3rd chapter, that even an individual who has the power, is trying to control their intelligence, they can become overwhelmed by lust, right? Or Krishna says that, right? Arjuna is asking about what is it that is forcing a person, even of discriminating intelligence, it's against their will, forcing them to perform sinful activities. And then Krishna answers, Raja Guna Samudbhavaha, right? Mahashano Mahapapma, the great enemy of all living beings, is the sinful enemy known as lust. And so even someone who's discriminating, even someone who's fixed in their intelligence, who knows better, right, a senior devotee or something like that, then that individual can be pushed as if by force, right? It's like they don't want to commit sinful activities, but it's just the intensity of the desire and everything and they're caught up in it. Especially like if you have bad sadhana, you don't chant properly, like you're going through a difficult struggle in your spiritual life, and you're not strong. You don't have that power of discipline and control in your life, and you're not invested with the strength of sort of Krishna's mercy. By hearing about Krishna, you can very easily get pushed away by these types of things. Like the force can become so strong on you that it's practically like wrestles you to the ground and forces you to behave in ways that are sinful. So that's an unintentional sin. It's not what the devotee wants to do. It's not part of their life. It's not the level that they want to act at. It's just they're overwhelmed in the moment, okay? Intentional sins are not really, that's a whole other subject. That's like the individual has serious problems, right? So Vedic knowledge is transcendental and cannot be understood by mundane educational procedures. One can understand the Vedic mantras only by the grace of the Lord and the spiritual master. Yasya deve para bhakti ditad deve tataguna. If one takes shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, it is to be understood that he has obtained the grace of the Lord. The Lord appears as a spiritual master for the devotees. Thus the spiritual master of the Vedic conjunctions, the Lord himself from within, all guide the devotee in full strength. In this way, there is no chance for a devotee to fall again into the mire of material illusion. Mire means like a swamp, right? The devotee thus protected all around is sure to reach the ultimate destination of perfection. The entire process is hinted at in this mantra in Srimad Bhagavatam 1:17-20, explains it further. So it's just kind of interesting, if I may give a kind of a personal insight, is that for a long time I've studied astrology, and so I've seen a lot of individuals who also study astrology, and even teachers and influential people. And it's like when they study when they speak about astrology and stuff, they know what they're talking about, like the qualities of planets and all that. But then when they try to speak about like spiritual knowledge, or they try to speak about the Vedas, or they try to speak about the avatars, like they really have no idea what they're talking about, And it's really like very confused and deluded, and they always make up their own stuff and like totally speculate about what this means or that means. So that's kind of what's being talked about here, is there's a lot of people that study the Vedas, but only by educational processes. Like they just buy a book on Amazon and then they read it, Like Srimad Bhagavatam. Like I know one teacher who, it's like, he knows Sanskrit. I mean, probably not a Sanskrit scholar or anything. Certainly didn't study it for 15 years, which is like the minimum. But he knows some Sanskrit, probably taught himself Sanskrit, bought a course online and whatever, over a month or so, learned some Sanskrit. And then all of a sudden he's going to translate the Bhagavatam, and give his own translation. And, why? Because, he can read a little Sanskrit, and, his reading of it is just as qualified as anyone else's, right? And so in this way, people, they like to study the Vedas like that. It's just a question of buying a book, or there's a lot of people that I've seen, like their mentality is, it could be, like just basically in regards to the Vedas, that they study it, but they don't have any guru, and they don't accept any authority, right? Like, I'm trying not to be like mention names or get too detailed, but it's kind of like you have a lot of people that will even write books. Like, they're very knowledgeable, like they're very intelligent, they're very capable, and they're very focused, and they can write, and and they can think, and they can teach, they can do all these things, but they don't accept any authority. And even in their writings, it's like they're attacking authorities and rejecting authorities. And this is really kind of the Western style of doing things, is that you don't accept any authority. And you don't have any loyalty to guru or anything like that. And they even attack the very principle of loyalty to guru. They think it's like, that's holding you back, Like, what do you mean? How are you going to study the Vedas if you're just all bound up under some guru and you just take what they say and you don't think outside the box, right? You got to just forget guru, forget all this kind of rigorous, like they attack, like Hinduism is too religious, it's too narrow-minded, it's too much like under the authority of guru. You have to just reject all that and just find it yourself. Just take the Vedas and read them yourselves, and God will give you the answers within, or whatever. And that's the way that comes from Protestantism, right? Is the rejection of any kind of authority in regards to the Scripture, that each individual is qualified to be their own teacher of the Bible. That's what many ways where Protestantism. Of course, I'm simplifying things, but there's a rejection of the Catholic Church and sort of like the Orthodox interpretation of the Bible. Each individual is their own interpreter, right? So that same attitude is then applied to the Vedas. It's very common these days, mostly like outside of India. In India, there's still like a culture that you have to have a guru and you have to follow the authority and stuff like that. Okay? So Prabhupada's making the point here that yasya deve prabhaktir yate deve tataganao. Like, you have to really accept a guru, and that's the only way that you can develop the true understanding. You can't just speculate your way to it. Okay? So I guess the reason I'm talking about this, because I'm trying to impress upon you, Prabhus, that we may not, we hear this many times, right? But we don't necessarily mix so much with the outside world in terms of like individuals who are dealing with the Vedas and stuff like that. But when you do, you really see it. You really see that people have no respect for the principle of guru, and it's like rife with wild speculation. And each individual is kind of coming up, I think this, and I think that, and I think that. So that's not really how the Vedas are meant to be dealt with. So hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord is itself an act of piety. The Lord wants everyone to hear and chant His glories because He is the well-wisher of all living entities. By hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, one becomes cleansed of all undesirable things, and then one's devotion becomes fixed upon the Lord. At this stage, the devotee acquires the Brahminical qualifications, and the effects of the lower modes of nature, passion and ignorance, completely vanish. The devotee becomes fully enlightened by virtue of his devotional service, and thus he attains to know the path. He comes to know the path of the Lord and the way to attain Him. As all doubts diminish, he becomes a pure devotee. So that's a reference, of course, to that chapter in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, Shunvatam Svakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana. Prabhupada's basically translating those verses. So thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports to Sri Isopanisad, the knowledge that brings one nearer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So Upanishad literally means sit down right here, right? Upa means near, and Nishad means sit down. So it's like, sit right here, That's what Upanishad, because it's the guru speaking to the disciple. The guru sits, and then all the disciples sit around at his feet, right? And so Isopanisad means, the knowledge. You can interpret it to mean that knowledge which is bringing you, Upa, near to Krishna. You sit at Krishna's feet, right? Okay? Any questions about this? Okay, we finished the Isopanisad. Congratulations, Prabhus.